Hello everyone, this is Starry Ari's ASMR. I am Ari, and today I have another fun baking video. So we are kind of coming into the season of baking, I feel like, and especially around the holidays, like those are just some of my favorite flavors, lots of cinnamon and ginger, just very yummy seasonings. And today I'm actually going to be trying a recipe that I haven't done before, and I printed out the recipe here, and these are for gluten-free pumpkin pie cookies. And here is what they look like. I think that they are so adorable. They look like little mini pumpkin pies. And then they did little dollops of whipped cream. I'm going to try and do a whipped icing so that it kind of will keep its shape and not melt like whipped cream. So this recipe I'm very excited to try because I've never done anything with gluten-free flour before. And I really want to make these cookies and try out a gluten-free recipe because most of the time when I make cookies or desserts, I send most of them off with my husband and he can share them off, at work. And that way I get some yummy treats, and then I also don't have to eat all of them. But he has a few coworkers that are gluten-free, and so I want to try this and see how this recipe goes. This is going to be a little experimental because, as you can see, I also am doubling the recipe, which is maybe not smart for a recipe I haven't ever done before, but this original recipe says that it makes 12 cookies, and I want to make more than just 12 cookies. So I have all of these ingredients, and I already wrote out the doubled amounts because I didn't want to trust myself to remember that I'm doubling all of these as I was going along if I didn't actually have it all pre-written. So this is the recipe, and I am not going to be offended whatsoever if, the people at work that are gluten-free, don't eat these cookies because I'm baking these at home, right? We use flour, and I have wiped down everything. I've, cleaned out our stand mixer really well. I made sure to wipe all around it, all around the vents, because I usually bake with regular flour. So there are opportunities for cross-contamination. As much as I have tried to reduce that, there's still a risk there. So I just want them to have the option because they never get to have the option with the regular desserts that I send off. So I'm also hoping that these just taste good. They look really good. Some of the reviews, there were only 10 reviews, but they were all good. So I'm hoping that these will taste like delicious cookies and not exclusively gluten-free desserts. So I'm gonna give this a try. We shall see how it goes, and hopefully it all works out okay. So I have gotten all of my ingredients for our pumpkin pie filling. So that's kind of what's going in the center of the cookie here, and our cookie dough. And then I also separately found a recipe for a cookie frosting because my royal icing recipe would probably not work if I wanted to pipe it like these cute little pipe dollops. So I wanted to do little dollops like this on the cookies so that it kind of looked like these little whipped cream dollops, and then that way they're also more stable. We can package the cookies and make sure that they the whipped cream actually, if I used whipped cream, I think it would melt and it would just be a mess. So I wanted something that looked like this, was really cute, would still taste good, but be like more stable. So these are the recipes I'm working with. And I have all of my ingredients laid out here, except I do need egg yolks for the cookie dough. These are for the pumpkin pie filling. So when I get to making the cookie dough, I'm going to grab out the other eggs and separate the egg yolks, which I also have done maybe like once or twice. So I shall see how that process goes. So here in the instructions, the first step is to adjust the oven rack to the middle position, preheat the oven to 350 degrees, and line a large baking sheet with parchment/baking paper. So I've done all of that. So my next thing to do is to make this pumpkin pie filling. So it says, in a bowl, whisk together all the pumpkin pie filling ingredients until smooth. Set aside until needed. So I'm going to go ahead and do this first. Before we begin, I'm going to wash my hands. Again, I wash my hands like 100 times when I'm baking, but I'm going to wash my hands, take off my rings, and then we can get started. So I've laid out or pulled aside all of the ingredients that I need for the pumpkin pie filling. Then as you can see here, I have a little kitchen scale, and this will help me precisely weigh out some of the ingredients, which I really want to make sure I do because this is the first time I'm doing this recipe. So the very first thing I need to measure out is this pumpkin puree. This is just 100% pure pumpkin. So there are no added spices or anything. This is not like pumpkin pie filling. This is just like pure pumpkin. So I need to open up the top and my trusty can opener here. And then now I'm going to tear the bowl to 0. And I actually need to change the units to grams. There we go. And then I am going to measure out my pumpkin. And we need 240 grams of this pumpkin. And this can is 425 grams. It's pretty close. There we go. Try and get just the tiniest bit out. 240 grams. I'm usually ridiculous about trying to get exactly on it. And then I'm actually going to save the rest of this pumpkin and use it in some overnight oats. I love pumpkin oatmeal, so I'm going to save the rest of this can. So I've got my pumpkin measured out, so I'm going to take this off. And then next we need to measure out the brown sugar. So I'm going to tear that again, so that makes the bowl equal 0. And then I need 100 grams of brown sugar. Okay, so that is 100 grams of brown sugar. So I'm going to just dump that into our bowl. Then we need our 2 eggs. And then next I need 2 tablespoons of this heavy whipping cream. And I have this Country Crock dairy-free cream alternative. And my husband and I have used this in some like soups and things that we want to kind of make creamier, but have it be dairy-free because he's lactose intolerant. So I'm going to try this. This is another one of those things where I'm like, I've never done this recipe before. It would probably be best to actually like use everything they recommend, but we're winging it a little bit. So I need 2 tablespoons of this. That's 1 tablespoon. And that's 2 tablespoons. And now we're on to our spices. So I first need 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. There's 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. And then I need 1 teaspoon of this ground ginger. Half a teaspoon of this ground nutmeg. And then 1/4 teaspoon each of the allspice and the ground cloves. And now I am going to whisk this all together until it is completely smooth. And I'm really kind of scraping the sides just to make sure everything gets mixed together nicely. And here is our pumpkin pie filling. It smells absolutely delicious. So I'm now going to set this off to the side while we make the cookie dough. So I have rearranged a few things here, and I am going to now use my stand mixer to make the cookie dough. And we need to start by creaming the butter and brown sugar together. And I am using margarine, and I usually use margarine when I'm baking. It always kind of seems to be okay, but this is lightly salted. So I'm going to replace this for the unsalted butter and just leave out the added extra salt that the recipe calls for. So I need 2 sticks of butter, and then I need to measure out some more brown sugar. This is my brown sugar bowl that I used earlier. So that is tiered now. And then I'm going to measure out 200 grams of brown sugar. Right, I had just enough brown sugar, so I'm grateful for that. We are at just about 200 grams. I'm going to go ahead and put this in our stand mixer bowl. I'm going to add our 2 sticks of butter. And then I'm going to use this paddle attachment to cream all of this together until it's nice and smooth. Because baking can sometimes be loud, I will have little bits of voiceovers here and there throughout this video. And I have 4 egg yolks here. I tried my best. I accidentally broke one of the yolks, so it's kind of all messy in there. I think I still have some egg whites in here, but I tried my darndest, so we will see how this goes. And I also need to add With the eggs and vanilla bean paste added, we're going to let that fully combine. And while that is mixing, I'm going to add my dry ingredients into a separate bowl, starting with the gluten-free flour. I haven't worked with gluten-free flour before, and I assume people might have their own preferred brands, but I picked this one up from Bob's Red Mill, and it is a 1-to-1 gluten-free flour, and it already has xanthan gum added, which I think acts like the gluten replacement. I need 480 grams of this flour, and the kitchen scale comes in handy again. Then 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and I had actually just gotten this new container, and I hadn't seen ones with this metal lip before that I think is meant to help you scrape excess off of your measuring spoon, so I thought that was pretty cool. The recipe also called for xanthan gum and salt separately, but I'm not adding those because the flour and butter already have them. Then I need 4 whole teaspoons of cinnamon. I measured it out over this extra bowl just so I wouldn't accidentally spill a bunch out into the pre-measured flour. I personally really like cinnamon, but you could probably do a full teaspoon less if you don't want it to be such a forward flavor. Then 1 teaspoon of ground ginger and a 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. I'm going to mix this together with a fork and make sure that any small clumps are broken up. Once that is all mixed together, I'm going to slowly add it into the wet ingredients. As always, I had to make a mess on the counter. This is going to mix well until we get a smooth cookie dough with no flour clumps. So our dough is all finished over here, and I need to make our cinnamon sugar that we're going to roll the dough balls in. So I meant to tear the bowl. There we go. And I need 200 grams of white granulated sugar. And I need 4 teaspoons of cinnamon. And I'm just going to take my fork and mix that together to make our cinnamon sugar. So I have my cookie dough over here, I have my cinnamon sugar, and then I have my baking pan with the parchment paper on this side. And the recipe now says to use a cookie or ice cream scoop to scoop out a portion of the cookie dough, and then I'm going to roll it between my palms to shape it into a ball, and then roll it in the cinnamon sugar so that it's evenly coated. So I'm going to use this cookie like ice cream scoop. I do have a regular spoon here, a big like a regular tablespoon, so I'm going to see if this scoop works. And I'm going to start with that amount and then see, that kind of feels like maybe a large cookie. I kind of want them to be large cookies though. But now I'm just going to roll it around in my palm, just like this, until it is a nice ball that is kind of smoothed out. And then I'm going to roll this in the the cinnamon sugar until it is nicely coated, like that. There we go. And that is our first cookie. Scoop this one's a little bit smaller, so I'm going to try kind of a range of cookie sizes and see what works the best, I think, for this first batch. There we go, we've got our ball. Now I'm going to roll it in the cinnamon sugar. Like that. These are so yummy looking. This is a really nice dough texture too. I mean, like I said, I've never worked with the gluten-free flour before, so I didn't really know exactly what to expect, exactly kind of what dough texture I was looking for, but I feel like this came together quite nicely. And I like that you can see the vanilla bean seeds, is that what they're called? Like the specks in the actual cookies. I like that. I feel like doing cookies like this is always kind of satisfying. Like rolling them into a ball. It's kind of nice to take a break from my cutout sugar cookies. I mean, I do love cutout sugar cookies. I think they have a special place in my heart because you can also decorate them. But I think these ones will be really cute. Look like little mini pumpkin pies and then have the little dollop of frosting on top. I think that'll be really cute. I think that this recipe calls for like way more cinnamon sugar than I might actually need. And even though I'm rolling raw cookie dough in it, if we have extra cinnamon sugar, I honestly might save it and use it on some toast as like a whole dessert or something. It's probably not the smartest, but here we are. I'm glad that I doubled the recipe though, because I think I'm probably making these a little bit bigger than the creator of the recipe. I feel like I usually tend to make my cookies a little bit bigger than the intended recipe. I don't know if it's just that I grew up in a family that did large cookies, maybe. I don't know. I think I am getting cinnamon sugar all over the counter, but you know, when I bake, I think I do like a deep wipe down on the counter before I start, and then I wipe it like 10 times while I'm actually baking, and then I do a deep wipe down on the counter afterwards. I'm not the neatest, cleanest baker, but I am cleaner than my husband, so. So we have our first batch of cookies rolled out. So now we need to add in the pumpkin pie filling. So I'm going to move those out of the way for now. And then here are our cookies. And here is our pumpkin pie filling that we made earlier. So the recipe says to take a 1 tablespoon one tablespoon, and to make an indent in the center of the cookie dough ball. So we're kind of like pressing it down. I think kind of like that, hopefully. So these are kind of like thumbprint cookies, which I have also never made. I know my husband has. I hope I'm not like pressing them down too much. But we shall see with this first batch how they come out. So those are all now indented. They look kind of cute. So now I'm going to use that same measuring spoon and scoop out the pumpkin pie filling and just fill the indents we just made. The recipe says that it can be full to the brim. That's okay. The filling shouldn't overflow while it bakes. So I'm hoping that that is true. If not, I think I will have some messy cookies on my hands. Alright, so I have our cookies now filled. I accidentally spilled a little bit, got a little messy with a couple of them, but the next thing is to bake these for 10 to 12 minutes. So I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes here's what they look like before. And here are the cookies coming out of the oven. So the recipe does say to have these cool on the pan. I ended up doing them for the full 12 minutes. So I'm going to let these cool for a little bit and kind of see how they do, and then we will roll out the second batch. So while the other batch is cooling, I'm going to go ahead and roll out the second batch. And I'm hoping that we will be able to just do 2 batches, and some of these I'm actually going to make a little bit smaller because they did puff up quite a bit, which is kind of nice. It's nice to have large cookies, but I also want a variety of smaller ones if somebody doesn't want to take like quite a large cookie. So because this batch is going to be smaller cookies, we might end up having to do a third smaller batch, and I do have a third like smaller baking sheet. So that would work out if we need to do that. While I was baking the first batch, my husband confirmed that he would probably also still use the cinnamon sugar if I save it. So it seems like neither of us are really caring in the face of potential salmonella. I am baking these in the evening. It's not even quite 6 p.m. yet, and it is already completely dark outside, which is so sad. I think some of my dough balls are kind of creeping up in size again. Okay, these aren't gonna look, the most uniform of cookies because I am doing them in different sizes, but that's okay, I think it's nice to have a variety of sizes that people can choose, so they could choose what they're kind of feeling. Usually while I'm filming these baking videos, I either do it when my husband is at work, or if I do it in the evening like I am now, he very graciously goes upstairs for a bit so that I can film without him accidentally making noise in the background if he did. And then he's usually pretty okay with that because he gets yummy treats out of it too. And my husband does bake as well sometimes. I think I tend to bake more than he does, but he still does. He's always trying new recipes and like trying new desserts, whereas I usually like to stick to kind of the same types of things. I like to find a recipe that works well for me and then just kind of never stray from that. Whereas he's always doing experimental things. And sometimes that works out really well, and sometimes the desserts have not turned out really well. So it all kind of, depends on what you're looking to do. And I think he bakes for the fun of it like that. Like, he just kind of wants to see what he can make when he sets out to try and make something. Do you think I might end up needing the small baking sheet? So I might just spread out these ones a bit more. Just put them in at a regular dozen. So here's our second batch of cookies, and then I'm just gonna take this same teaspoon or tablespoon and press the indents on these cookies, even though it's kind of messy. The indents are being filled with pumpkin pie filling anyway, so I'm hoping that that is okay. Oh, I didn't think about that. It might make the edges a little messier. It's okay, that seems to be working out okay. Right, so I have these all indented, so now I'm going to fill them with our pumpkin pie filling. Here is our second batch of cookies. Again, a little bit messy, but I'm going to go ahead and throw these in. I think I'm going to do 11 minutes because some of these are a little bit smaller, and then I will check if they need that extra minute. So I have everything set out for the next batch, but here is the second batch of cookies. cookies. Again, kind of messy on the edges. I'm hoping when I do the dollops, I can do them around these parts to kind of hide some of the mess. But these ones I'm going to let cool now. So while that second batch is cooling, I'm now going to roll out the third batch. I think it will be the final one for the rest of our dough. I am worried that I'm going to have extra pumpkin pie filling, and I'm not entirely sure what I can do with that because it does have egg in it. So these ones are now all rolled out. So I'm going to take my tablespoon and just do the little impressions again. I'm trying to get it pretty even so that the filling doesn't like run to one side. But that is kind of hard with this measuring spoon for some reason. I think it's because it's like a plastic one, and so it's like wanting to like bend at the handle when I'm pressing down on it. Alright, those are all indented. Let's put some filling in them. So I do have a bit of extra pumpkin pie filling. I'm gonna look up and see what I could do with this because it feels like kind of a sad waste for something so yummy. So for now, I'm gonna put this in a little container and pop it in the fridge until I figure out what to do with it. And here's our third and final batch of cookies ready to go in the oven. So while the third batch is baking, I actually looked up what I could do with this leftover pumpkin pie filling, and I found things online saying that you could just try and bake it like a custard, and you could just eat it like that. So I have a kind of large ramekin here that I'm going to try and use. I don't give it a try, and then that at least kind of uses up this pumpkin pie mix so that it doesn't go to waste, because it smells very, very tasty. So yeah, this is way overkill for ramekin, but we actually don't have any smaller, so I'm going to go ahead and bake this for a little bit and just kind of see what happens. So here is our third batch of cookies. So all of the cookies are done. I'm going to let all of these completely cool, and then I will work on the icing to do the adorable little whipped cream dollops. Here are the cookies freshly baked, so not fully cooled yet. They were certainly not the prettiest, but we all have our flaws, so we can't judge. So the cookies have been cooling for a while, so it is time to make my sugar cookie vanilla buttercream frosting so I can do the little like whipped cream dollops on top. So I've got my stand mixer here all cleaned out with the whisk attachment. I've got powdered sugar, my margarine, vanilla extract, and heavy whipping cream. And this is the recipe that I'm using for this cookie vanilla buttercream frosting. It has these adorable little dollops, so I'm hoping that my frosting will come out that texture. So the first thing I need to do is beat the butter. It says until it's light and fluffy. That's before I start adding in the powdered sugar. The recipe recommended whipping the butter a bit before adding in the powdered sugar, so I set the mixer to a medium-high speed. Then I slowly added in the powdered sugar, a half cup at a time. I added 2.5 cups, but the recipe says you could add more later to thicken your frosting if you need it. I don't really make buttercream frosting, but this one was so easy that I might try it a bit more in the future. Alright, so now that our butter and sugar are whipped together, I'm going to add my vanilla and the heavy whipping cream. And we need 1 teaspoon of this vanilla extract. And then I'm going to start with 2 tablespoons of the heavy whipping cream. And then if the icing still seems too thick, I can add more to kind of help thin it out a little bit. The recipe does call for salt, but because I used salted margarine, I'm not going to add that in. And then I'm now going to go ahead and mix this all together again. Okay, I don't normally work with buttercream, so I don't know exactly what I'm looking for consistency wise. I think that this looks okay. I'm going to go ahead and try and bag it, and then we will see if it actually works. If in my test run it's like falling over way too loose, I could put it back in here to mix for a little bit. It would be a pain, but I could. So it's not going to be the end of my icing if it doesn't work. So I have my piping bag here with a tip already on it. I think this one might work for the dollops, but I do have this other one just in case that I could use. I'm going to go ahead and try and bag some of this icing. Or frosting. I keep saying icing, but I'm just used to working with royal icing more than buttercream frosting. Okay, I think I'm going to start with that. See how this consistency works before I add a bunch more into the bag. I have my piping bag here, and I am going to try a couple of test dollops on just the kind of blank parchment paper. Okay, that's not quite right. Oh, that's better. That's pretty cute. Let me do a couple more. Okay, so I think I need to squeeze the piping bag from up higher and then just kind of leave it there, and then it gets a little bit of a cuter shape. Okay, I think that those are pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and twist these. So these are going to be, I think, the cookies that I keep. So I'm going to practice my little dollops on here. And I'm going to try and put some of them kind of like in some of these imperfection spots. Some of them in the middle like that. Which is really cute. It looks like little whipped cream dollops. Little one there, and then I'll do a bigger one right there. There we go. Okay, so the one on the website had them kind of in like different locations on the cookies. I think I like them the most when they're in the center like this. I think that's really cute. And they are spreading a little bit. So I do think that I need to maybe whip up my icing just a little bit more. Okay, so I have my new icing all bagged, and then these are the remaining cookies. So I'm going to go ahead and just do dollops kind of right in the middle for all of them. There weren't really any sounds from the piping, and I was clearly in the zone, so I went ahead and sped this up. Here are all of the cookies with the frosting on them. I think my frosting still could have been a little bit thicker, or I could have used the thinner piping tip. I think this is okay. So I also wanted to show you my little like souffle, I guess, kind of, or like custard with the pumpkin pie filling. So this is what it turned out. So I think that it should be pretty tasty. I am going to top it with some of my extra icing that I still have, though, because I do still have quite a bit of frosting. I keep saying icing, oh my goodness. I'm going to try and do cute little dollops. There we go. I'm actually going to have this cold, probably maybe for dessert tomorrow, so I'm going to cover this and have it in the fridge, but I think that's really adorable. It's so cheesy, but it's cute. Here is a picture of the recipes, adorable example cookies, just as a reminder. And here are my cookies. They are certainly what I would consider rustic, but I honestly still think that they are kind of cute. I also had some extra buttercream, and I saw online that you can freeze it and use it again in the future, so I went ahead and bagged that up because, frankly, ingredients are too expensive these days for me to be throwing this much away. I let the cookies cool covered in the fridge overnight, and that really helped the buttercream set. I also found these cute fall themed paper plates that I wanted to use to pack up the cookies. I always like to send a little note card with any desserts, and I usually put allergen ingredient info on the back. I've had gluten-free desserts before that were what I would consider kind of obviously gluten-free, like crumbly or dry or just like not quite right. But honestly, these were really good standalone cookies, and I don't think I would have thought that they were gluten-free if I didn't know already. I also sent a pack of these cute fall-themed napkins for people to grab cookies with, as they do kind of spill a little bit of the outside cinnamon sugar as you eat them. Well, I hope you enjoyed this fall-themed baking video, as I made these very yummy pumpkin pie cookies. I am excited to make some more cookies soon in December, especially my favorite gingerbread cookies. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and that you get to eat some yummy treats this holiday season. Goodbye.